3 former senior military officials file an amicus brief in the U.S. Supreme Court supporting Trump's immunity. You remember that ridiculous question from those judges at the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. What if Trump asks SEAL Team 6 to eliminate his political opponents or half of Congress or whatever? And of course, that's a ridiculous question, not only because if that happens, if half of Congress gets obliterated, we're kind of in a bigger problem, but also because the military would not do that. That is an illegal order. And so 3 senior officials submitted this amicus. We'll read through it and then hear from the others who are involved in the TDS deluge saying that we've got to have a trial before the election. And Clavicle Girl, who is a liar, is saying we have to vote against Trump to save America because they say that Trump's an insurrectionist, a little dictator who's going to commandeer the military, but the military doesn't think so. This is what was submitted to the Supreme Court. The brief for 3 former senior military officials, we'll learn who they are, in support of Donald Trump in his petition to SCOTUS for immunity. They say, big question. Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Remember that ridiculous question? That question was posed by a member of the panel at oral argument in the court in D.C. Now, the amicus, the amici who are filing this, who have served as military combat generals and senior officials at the Pentagon and who've held other senior executive positions, submit an answer to the panel in D.C. The answer is a resounding no. A president of the United States enjoys broad authority to direct the military with very few limitations, but one limitation is that the president's orders may not contravene the Constitution or the laws of the United States. And so accordingly, the president has no authority to order the military to assassinate a political rival. And furthermore, the military is required not to carry out such an unlawful or non-military order if given. Indeed, any military officer who carried out or issued such an order would be committing the gravest of crimes, which is called murder. Now, whether or not a president has the immunity that they claim, we don't know, but we do know that a president cannot order the military to assassinate a political rival and actually have that order carried out. So if you're going to hyperventilate about that, Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, or Ketanji, well, relax, okay? We wouldn't do it anyways. Now, amici are 3 former high-ranking military leaders. Their military and Pentagon service spans more than half a century under 10 presidents of both political parties with widely divergent policy agendas. Amicus Secretary Robert Wilkie served as the Pentagon under Bush, and he also served under Trump, the 3rd highest ranking position in the Pentagon. He served in the Navy, the Air Force, attaining the rank of colonel. He concluded his service as a public official in the Trump administration, Secretary of Veteran Affairs. Dude's qualified. Boom. Amicus number 2, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, Vietnam veteran, Commander, Special Operations, 82nd Airborne. Later served in the Trump administration, Executive Secretary and National Security Advisor. Acting NSA, he's currently the co-chair for the Center for American Security. Also qualified. This other guy is another amicus, William Gerald Jerry Boykin. Distinguished combat career included the attempted rescue of the Americans during the Iranian hostage crisis, commander of the Army's elite Delta Force, and commanded all the Green Berets and the JFK Special Warfare Center, which trains the Green Berets. Also served in the Pentagon in the civilian role of the Defense for Intelligence, currently the Executive VP of Family Research Council, okay? So this dude, like if you wanted somebody to take out, your political opponents, it's probably this dude, right? Like he would be the dude to do it. Take the Army's Delta Force. So here's their argument. They say, all right, listen, ridiculous hyperventilators from the DC Circuit. The president has broad authority to issue military orders, but there are some noteworthy limitations. One limitation is that the president has no authority to order the military to assassinate someone because he's a rival, okay? Nor would the military carry that out. Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, any military officer who carried out or issued an order would be committing a crime called murder. In addition, Executive Order 1233 prohibits any person employed by the government from conspiring to assassinate. And so thus, no military officer has the legal authority to carry out a murder or assassination. And so the answer is pretty simple. The answer to the panel's question is no. The president cannot order the SEAL to assassinate his political rival and have the military carry out such an order. Here is the legal background. At the oral argument, they asked that question. Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his rival? In response, counsel for the petitioner for Trump said, well, you would have to be and would speedily be impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution, right? Which is the right answer. If you said that this was a lawful order, you'd say, well, you'd have to challenge that. You say it's not a lawful order. How would you do that? Through impeachment. He would be impeached and prosecuted. Now, numerous media outlets all seized on this. Trump lawyer says that he could assassinate. Wow. The D.C. Circuit's opinion seemingly referred to this exchange, stating that petitioners' proposed interpretation still would leave with the president, who would be free to commit all manner of crimes with immunity so long as he's not impeached and convicted, right? And that's what their excuse was, which is why they couldn't find that Trump had immunity, because then he could just do whatever he wants, which is obviously ridiculous because all you would have to do is impeach him. But in Amicus' view, the panel member's question may be answered with a firm no. To be clear, there may be circumstances in which a president may order the military to use lethal force against particular individuals to protect national security. That's the Jack Bauer 24 situation. But no such circumstances were referenced in their question. So the answer to the question the panel asked is that a president simply cannot order. That can't happen. Now, the office of the president has broad authority when it comes to foreign military affairs, but the ordering of military to bring about the death of a political rival for personal gain is not one of them. Under the British form of government from which the United States won independence, the king can do no wrong. That's from Blackstone. But that is not how we do things in our country under our Constitution. Under the Constitution, no one in the national government, no one may deprive another of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the Constitution. The president is not exempt from that. Now, the fundamental guarantee is not repealed by the constitutional provision stating that the president shall be the commander-in-chief. Jackson agreed that this clause undoubtedly puts the armed forces under the presidential command, but he rejected the notion that it provides support for any presidential action involving the use of force with the Navy or anything like that. The president's command power is not so absolute that it allows him to be, have a militaristic system that overrides the republic. The Constitution gives the president no authority to declare martial law or suspend the Bill of Rights. The court talked about this. Martial law destroys every guarantee of the Constitution and renders the military independent of and superior to civil power. Now, the attempt to do, which by the King of Great Britain was deemed by our fathers as such an offense, they are irreconcilable. You cannot have the two together. And so military law and executive orders forbid this. The United States Armed Forces embody cherished American values and principles. Respect for innocent life is amongst them. And that's why we're the most effective fighting force in the world. But we have a solemn duty and an awesome power to respect life and to support and defend the Constitution. And murder is a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It says any person who unlawfully kills a human is guilty of murder, and that would not be allowed. So therefore, any officer who engaged in the murder on the orders of the president would be subject to the death penalty, and the officer would know it. The executive order also bars assassination, and military officers are just simply not required to carry out unlawful orders. Any presidential order to use the military would be a grave felony crime, and any military officers who knowingly issued or carried out the order would also be criminally liable. And the rules of court-martial are promulgated by the president and are a mechanism by which commander-in-chief implements the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And they may assert defenses, but only if the order is lawful. Now, this is seen in Article 92. The military is by design hierarchical. So while it's a crime to disobey a lawful order, an order is lawful only if it does not contravene superior authority. And so no person in the chain of command, including the CNC, may issue an order that violates the Constitution or the law of the United States. Sorry, judges. Indeed, the constitutionality prescribed form of the oath of office requires the president to execute the office of the president and to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, which of course says that you don't get to just murder people. And that's all incorporated into the UCMJ, and the military wouldn't do this anyway. So through rigorous instruction and tragic lessons from history, military officers are trained not to carry out unlawful orders. They know they may be held criminally liable if they do. In a televised interview during the presidential campaign of 2016, retired General Michael Hayden, who served as the director of the CIA, director of the NSA, would ask what would happen if petitioner, then a candidate for president, ordered the military to kill the families of terrorist targets. Hayden said, well, if he were to order that once in government, the American armed forces would refuse to act. Bill Maher says, what? That's quite a statement, sir. He says it's a violation. I thought the whole thing was you have to follow orders. He says, no, you cannot. You are not committed. You are not required. In fact, you are required not to follow an unlawful order. That would be in violation of all international laws and armed conflict. And so they say, look, amici agree with that. The military would not carry out a patently unlawful order from the president to kill non-military targets. And indeed, service members are required not to do so. And examples of military officers carrying out unlawful orders and murdering civilians are exceedingly rare in American history. One such example is the case involving Lieutenant William Calley, who executed civilians in Vietnam in what history calls the My Lai massacre. The trial judge's instructions included the following: unless the superior order is one which a man of ordinary sense and understandings knows to be unlawful, jury instructions said, was this reasonable for him to say this was lawful or unlawful? Several American soldiers under Calley's commands refused to obey his orders, and although ordered by Calley to shoot, Private First Class James Dursey refused to join the killings, and Specialist 4 Robert E. Maples refused to give his machine gun to Calley for use in the killings. Neither Dursey nor Maples were ever charged in connection with those killings, but the others were. Now, the crimes committed by Calley over 50 years ago have not been forgotten. Military officers would know that a presidential order to assassinate a civilian for political ends would pose a grave criminal act, and that order would not be carried out. So a president cannot order an elite military unit to kill a political rival, and the members of the military are required not to carry out such an unlawful order, as it would be a crime. Now, to the extent that the judgment of the Court of Appeals was based on a contrary understanding, the judgment should be vacated or reversed, right? So it was just a ridiculous hypothetical that they made up to scare themselves into justifying why the president doesn't have immunity. And it was just a stupid question from the beginning. So nice brief. Shout out to our 3 former senior military officials who are coming out of the woodwork to support this and put to bed that ridiculous hypothetical. But hopefully that will quell some of the fear that is out there about dictator Trump. Not if Liz Cheney has anything to say about it. She's out here, and I wanted to just share a little bit of what she sounds like, just so we're apprised of what's happening. But she is now saying we have to have this election, this trial before the election. We have to have the trial before the election because Trump looks like he might win. Here's Liz.
Our justice system has to be able to work to hold him accountable, to have a trial on the January 6th evidence before the next election.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally important. And I think that in particular why this matters so much is because, Donald Trump, he knows what people have said when they've testified in front of the grand jury. He has all of that information.
No, he doesn't.
He knows. He's got all of the transcripts.
No, he doesn't.
All of the transcripts.
No, you deleted a bunch of those, Liz. We're missing a ton of those.
From the January 6th committee.
Benny Thompson deleted those. They're gone.
All of the evidence. He knows that the people who will testify against him in open court in that January 6th trial are those closest to him. They are people who were the most senior members of his administration.
Wrong.
People probably like the vice president.
Are they going to say that he attacked someone's clavicle, Liz? Like they're going to come out and make up garbage lies that there is no corroboration for? And it took you 4 interviews with Cassidy Hutchinson to get her to change her story to make something useful? Got it.
The vice president's counsel, attorney general, the acting attorney general, the head of his campaign, all of the people closest to him will be testifying in open court about what he did, about his culpability, about what he was doing while the attack was happening.
That's not a crime. There are no crimes there. All of it's protected by presidential immunity, as hopefully the Supreme Court says soon enough. But here was another clip from Cassidy Hutchinson. Okay, this was the woman who said that someone told her that there was a clavicle attack when Trump was in the beast. Turns out that never happened. And the person she said that told her the story told Liz Cheney that that person never told her that story. So it was all made up, as we know.
This election itself is so much bigger than party politics. It's about the survival of our country.
Yes.
If we want to continue having elections in the future, we need to make sure that we vote for the candidate who ensures that we can survive as a country. And that candidate isn't Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But that said, too, we need to make sure that we're
She's
having
at Harvard.
responsible conversations and we're not catastrophizing things. There are a lot of very smart, hardworking American people who are suffering financially right now, or they may have other reasons that they wouldn't want to vote for Joe Biden. But Joe Biden is a man of character and of decency, and I believe is an honest person with the American people, who is fully committed to making sure that American democracy and our constitutional republic will survive past 2024 and 2028. So in this next election cycle, it's important to focus on Donald Trump, but it's also really, really imperative that we look at Congress, because Donald Trump would not be where he is, I'm confident, had he not warped almost the entire Republican Party in Congress to do his bidding.
So you see what they're going to do, man. They're assembling their TDS Spice Girl team. She's like the slow talk Spice or whatever. And they're just, going to be shoving her around all over the place throughout, between now and the election to come out and do that little routine. Our constitutional republic, save democracy. Biden's a man of character. Give me a break. All right. It's all a dumb facade. So her and Liz Cheney are continue to do the Trump loves Hitler, Trump's a tyrant saga. We're going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends, because 3 former senior military officials say all of this fake hypothetical is meaningless. It is not consequential. The military would never do it anyways. But we're waiting for for SCOTUS to hold oral arguments on the immunity issue. We're going to be covering it live when they do. And so thank you for joining us, my friends, here today. Don't forget to check out some of the links down in the description below. We've got robertgovea.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter and access all the PDFs we cover here, and watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where you can sign up to become a member, get the streams in the morning, get the streams on Saturday, and meet some amazing people inside. We'd love to see you back here on the next one.